Welcome to the Attuned Therapist podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Tatum, and I'm excited to introduce our guest this morning. Her name is Annie Gipson. Annie, welcome.
Hey.
I'm excited to have you here with me today. As you know, this podcast is all about attuning inward and what it means to be a therapist, but first and foremost, to be a human. And so I'm interested to hear all the thoughts you have around this idea that we shared together. But perhaps first, let's hear a bit about who you are and what you do as a therapist.
Well, hello, good morning. Thank you for that welcome. Who am I as a therapist? What do I do as a therapist? I started my own practice about a year ago, so a little over a year ago. And I get to see people in my office. I specialize in animal-assisted therapy and all kinds of fun stuff with experiential therapy. So right now, that with being a clinical supervisor, those are kind of my main hats that I wear.
And what brought you to this place with where you're at presently?
You know, I came to this place from complete just trauma. Trauma of being in the field, burnout, compassion fatigue. It's basically like I crawled into, this is my option. I can start my own company or leave the profession altogether, is really kind of what I felt. I wasn't sure that I would have the ability to sustain if I didn't take a really drastic step and do something different.
Interesting. So with you identifying, starting my own business and being the business owner, seeing that as a way to meet needs coming up for you, what was it about being a business owner? What was it about that would help you in meeting your needs? Was it the sense of autonomy, the ability to trust yourself?
Yeah, I think part of it is being able to call the shots for the most part and know that I get to decide how I use my license. I get to decide who I see. I get to look at the hours that I work. I get to look at the types of therapy that I do. And certainly I had beautiful, I've had wonderful jobs. I've gotten to do incredible work, and I'm grateful for all of the work that led me here. And I have been in positions where people were using my license in ways that didn't align with my values, and where decisions were being made that I didn't necessarily agree with or align with. And there's a sense of powerlessness and kind of looking at, I have worked so hard to get this license and to kind of be who I am. And it's scary to think that that can be damaged because of, decisions that other people are making. I think I also realize that, I was being told things about finances from other people, and that there was kind of this limit on my earning potential. And I had a really hard time reconciling the fact that the cap on my earning potential would leave me needing to work 6 days a week for the rest of my life. I worked 6 days a week for, over 15 years, all the way through grad school, and beyond. And I didn't agree anymore with this idea that being a social worker meant I had to take a vow of poverty and burn myself out and make myself sick just to, pay my bills and have a life that's certainly not a luxury lifestyle. Certainly if people want to have that lifestyle, go for it, earn your money and do it. For me, it was really just about being able to sustain in a way that was comfortable. And I wasn't able to do that in other settings.
Gosh, you're saying so much, but I just hear a persistent theme of security, right? Because when you were in those prior positions where your license was being misused by those above you, I highly doubt that when you interviewed for that position, you signed up for that, right? It's so easy for us in this profession to get ourselves into hired positions thinking that it's a good fit, or that this is, the specialty that we want to work with, or this is the mentor that we want to work under. And it's not until we're in it and we've then committed ourselves to clients that we start to realize, like, oh my gosh, this either is unpredictable or unreliable or perhaps even abusive or exploitative in some way or another for us. And so it's an unfortunate aspect of our profession. But I'm also really struck by the fact that you just said you worked 6 days a week for 15 years. Like my body had a physical response to that.
Yeah, I think that, going back and getting my master's and becoming a social worker was this perfect combination of all of my unhealed codependency and people pleasing and all of my stuff, right? And then I found this profession that really allowed me to lean into that, but it was like praised, right? Like, look at her, look at how hard she's working, look at all the things she's doing. And then I got to martyr myself, right? Well, in order to work this job, I've got to work this other job. And, I can't make ends meet by doing this, but look, I'm helping all the people, by taking this job in community mental health and, or taking insurance, through someone's practice or doing this other side gig or whatever it is, And so it certainly it wasn't all the field, right? It was definitely this perfect combo of everything that I brought to the table, all of my unhealed wounds, and what we experience in the field. And I think for me, like, what was really hard is the disillusionment of these jobs, the disillusionment of being so excited for this next position, right? The next job is going to be the one that I really feel where I'm valued and seen for who I am, where my skills are not seen as a threat, where I get to grow and really expand, where I get to help people and pay my bills, like blah, 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 right? Insert whatever it was that I thought that next job was going to give me. And I had some experiences that left me just completely wrecked, where I really needed to reevaluate, right? Like, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What is the value of what I bring to the table? What are my skills from a business perspective, right? I had experience in management before being a program director. So I had a lot of business experience that I wasn't utilizing. So for me, being able to combine and create something and give myself permission, right? Like, give myself permission to have a cash pay practice and find other things that align with my value system. If sliding scale, whatever that looks like, right? But also know that it is absolutely okay to not take insurance. And it is absolutely okay if you need a season where you're not doing a bunch of pro bono work. It is absolutely okay, right? To build something where you get to have a little bit of security. And that's really what this last year has been for me, is building something, setting a boundary of only seeing clients 4 days a week, giving myself that day to kind of do business types of things, giving myself 2 days off a week, trying to just feel that in my system for a little while. Then knowing that I get to go wherever I go in the future and do whatever it is that I want to do. But I needed some time to heal, and I still haven't gotten there. I've still got a long way to go. But I had to take a step back, and I had to kind of put on earmuffs to all of the things that people were telling me, right? That, made it hard for me to take this step. I had to just kind of say, like, nope, F that, sorry for you. I have to do what's best for me. And honestly, like, it's been incredible to meet people who have come alongside and are aligned with that and are cheering me on. And it's also been really sad to hear from the people who had a lot of negative things to say about the path that I've chosen. And I think that's just really sad. And I don't want that for our field. People shouldn't have to get to the point where they are physically ill, which is where I was.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Well, and, you mentioned in several different ways the level of permission that you gave yourself
Yeah.
that wasn't necessarily extended to you by those above you in supervising or mentoring or training positions. But not just permission to have financial security, but to understand the whys behind who you were and where you've been, right, professionally, and recognizing that there was something going on for you driving who you were and who you had been within those settings, which I very much relate to, and I would imagine most therapists can relate to you and I that we're really good at attending to others at our own expense. Like, I think that's why we gravitate towards this profession in the first place. A lot of us, I think a lot of us can relate to that. And I just wish so badly that our educational programs would emphasize from the very beginning understanding the deep inner truths around why you've even chosen this path, right? Whether it be your
Right.
first career or second or third, like what has motivated you to sit here in this classroom and learn what it means to be a therapist. But I would imagine too that a lot of the feedback that you've received that was more of a negative tone um, is probably reflective of just all the messaging and dare I say dogma of our
Mm,
profession, like you were saying, like a vow of oath or a vow of poverty to
mhm.
be a social worker. I think that is at some point said in almost every person's um, educational setting to become a
Yeah.
therapist, that you are never going to make money, or in the beginning, you kind of have to put in your dues, right?
Mm,
Before you can consider having not even wealth, but financial security.
right. Yeah, I think that for me, there's a really big difference in paying dues and gaining experience, right? I certainly would not have been ready to start my own cash pay practice right out of grad school. I needed experience, right? I needed to have clinical experience, to have teaching, to have mentorship. I still need those things. I still seek supervision, right? I still seek ways to grow over a decade in the field. And um, so I think being able to shift our mindset from this idea that people need to pay dues. And yeah, absolutely. My earning potential as a newly associate licensed LMSW, very different than my earning potential now. It still didn't mean, or it still didn't have to mean though, right? That I had to work the way that I worked. And I think people being able to come alongside and say, hey, I see how you're working. Let's have a conversation about where this is coming from, right? I had a really great supervisor in grad school who is still a good friend of mine. And he was the first person that kind of like, you know, mentioned the idea of me going to therapy. And I had done some therapy before grad school, but he really kind of encouraged me to look at self-care in a different way. And I was working in an internship with a population that was very closely aligned with my family system. So there were things that were being triggered that I wasn't even aware of, right? So then I was showing up in certain ways that I couldn't recognize because, right? I couldn't. Why would I have been able to recognize that, right? So having someone that could give me the insight into like, hey, you know, this is maybe something that you could benefit from, right? Have you thought about this? And I wish that other people along the way in my journey had been able to, I think I very much heard, oh yeah, no, you're great, you're awesome. Like I don't really have any feedback for you. Um, but see, which is fantastic, right? Like, so yeah, I excelled at everything that I did and I was good at this and good at that, but that's not accurate. There were things that I wasn't doing well that people for whatever reason didn't point out. And I certainly wish that someone would have at some point said, hey, the way you're working is not sustainable, right? You might be able to sustain it, but what is the cost, right? And why are you needing to do what you need to do? Financially, if you need to take a second job in order to help with student loans, like what could that second job look like? How can we help you adjust some things to where this is a sustainable thing? Okay, so let's look at it as a season, right? Not as this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. And then people praised it, right? Oh my God, she's such a good worker. Oh, wow, she stayed late. Oh, yeah, she got all of her notes done before everyone else. Whatever it is, right? It's kind of seen as this like badge of honor, to see a million clients and to do all of your notes and to be an excellent clinician and it's not. It's super sick, right? And there were times where, yeah, I mean, I do feel proud of the work that I produced clinically. And I also feel like someone very much could have come along and said, hey, you're not going to take this extra client, actually. Or you're not going to pick up that third or fourth day of private practice while working a full-time job. Or, it just, there wasn't, no one helped me set the boundaries that I needed to know how to set for myself and figure out what healing looked like for me so that I wasn't trying to heal my own wounds through a 60-hour work week in a profession that was praising me for behavior that was making me sick.
Well, and I believe it's the truth of us being therapists is that this was our career, right? So we're working. At anytime we have our therapist hat on, we are working, whether it be for someone else or for ourselves, right? And when it's for someone else, naturally there's then job expectations, job duties, yada, yada, yada. And any employer is going to value and appreciate the hardworking employee, regardless of why they're showing up that way, right? So it then becomes very dependent on who our employers are, who our supervisors are, managers, like who's above us, to then see us through that lens of curiosity of why are your notes on time every time when that's not necessarily attainable for everyone who works here, right? Like, why is it that you are showing up in a perfect manner? And how might that be at your own expense comparatively to great job, you're number one again, keep up, here's a $5 gift card to show we appreciate you, right? Like, when we work with kids, as you and I both know, if we are working with a child that has been through any type of trauma, but yet they're like a really good kid, right? And they are perfect. You and I both know that's like a really big red flag, right? Of like what's going on internally for that child. And so it's just interesting to have this dialogue with you and realize that there's a lot of blind spots within our profession to be curious for those of us who are, quote, the good therapist or good employee.
Yeah, I consider it to be a green flag whenever one of my supervisees makes a mistake, or does something or whatever, quote unquote mistake, right? Or has difficulty setting a boundary. Yeah, they have a boundary, have a supervisee that has been learning a lot about boundary setting with certain populations. But we get to be curious about that, right? We get to look at, okay, clinically, is there anything that we need to do? Ethically, kind of like, is there anything that we need to shift in order to make sure that we're meeting the needs of this client? And let's look at also, let's be curious, right? Where is this coming from for you? Like, what is it about this client, right? Because we all have those experiences. But I consider that to be a really cool thing in supervision, right? Because then we get to learn, okay, this type of client brings up X, Y, and Z for me, and that might show up this way. So what do I need to do, either like for myself, or is there anything I need to learn about this population? Or, okay, now I have the opportunity next time to set a boundary differently. But it's, how do we know how to set boundaries with our clients until we, don't set it well and then have to like overcorrect, right? Like that's something that wasn't taught to me, right? So I learned, and I had great supervisors along the way. I had people that certainly gave me lots of support, and I got really great skills from people. And because I excelled in certain ways, I wasn't really given feedback to like, it was, I made mistakes, right? I And then I had to overcorrect, and then I had to learn from it, which is a natural part of the process. But I think if I had had someone to come along and say, hey, when you think about your caseload, right, when you think about structuring your day, this, what are the clients that really like excite you? What are the clients that seem to take most of your, more energy for you to show up, right? Okay, so if that's a major depressive client, it's more difficult for you to show up, sustainably throughout the session. Let's not put them at a 7 p.m. slot, right? Why don't we put them at 5, or let's put them earlier in the day when you're a little more fresh, so that you don't feel like you are having to, give from an empty cup in order to show up for that client. I think it's practical tools like that we don't think about. Our self-care. I think there's a lot of talk about self-care as like, yes, get your nails done. Yes, watch a movie. Yes, have time. Yes, go outside. Sure. And how are you structuring your caseload? What are the clients that you're taking on? What does your own therapeutic journey look like? If you're working on PTSD or grief or substance, whatever it is that might be showing up in your life, is there a way that you need to adjust in order to make sure you're showing up for the population that you're working with? Right? How are you holding stress in your body? Are you taking breaks during the day? Right? Like, I don't even know if I ate lunch for years. Or I would grab snacks, right? Or have a granola bar, or have something to go, or eat while I was doing notes, or whatever it was. There wasn't like an actual, no, don't do notes while you're eating your lunch during the day. Why don't you take 30 minutes and actually eat some food and breathe, listen to a fun podcast, listen to music, read a book, don't listen to anything, have silence, whatever it is. Don't take the extra client. I don't know. Like, I think there are so many things that I didn't know. Right. And then I didn't realize until I got to the point where, I was sick. Like, I physically, I went from running half marathons and lifting weights several times a week to not being able to walk a half mile on a flat surface without becoming dizzy and nauseous. I went into compliance. I was having migraines. I was not sleeping. I was completely exhausted, but nobody knew. Right? Like, I think there's also this kind of this sense of defeat, right? Well, then if I'm at this point, it must mean that I've done something wrong and it's all my fault.
Yeah.
Right? So I am to blame for being so sick. And I didn't really know where to go with that. Like, how do I tell people that this is where I'm at, right? I am not okay. When I'm at the point where I'm not, like, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh man, wouldn't it have been great if I didn't wake up, right? That's not an okay place to be. And through all of that, I was still seeing clients, 6 days a week or 5 days a week, or working multiple jobs, right? But then coming home to this complete and total, I was just a shell. And I kept working because I thought, well, if I just keep going, or I can't afford not to work, right?
Right.
I have to work because I need insurance. I have to make money so that I can see this naturopath or go to acupuncture or get them like, it just felt like this never ending pit, right? Like, I dug myself into this and now I can't get out, and I'm so physically sick that I don't know how to show up for myself at all. And I don't know where to go. Like, who do I go to get these skills, right? I'll go to a therapist. Sure. And then I'll feel like a fraud, right? And a failure, because now I'm going to show up for my clients and I'm coming from this place of complete illness, right? And I switch jobs. I get a job where I'm doing more solution focused, right? In a different setting where it's not just therapy all day. I'll use different skills. We can switch gears. We can do all the things. But at the end of the day, I was still sick, and I'm still working my way out of it. My body is now able to tolerate a little bit of weightlifting. I am able to do some cardio. But it has taken a really long time just to get my body back to being able to do the things that I love to do, right? So in the midst of that, not only was I physically ill, but then the things that brought me joy, like hiking and kayaking and backpacking, I didn't have the energy to do. I just wanted to fucking sit on the couch and eat sugar and act like none of it was happening, just so then I could get up in the morning and do it all over again and put on a happy face and, put my little pretender hat on, because I didn't know, right? I thought this is all that there is, maybe. And people would say things, right? Like, oh, we're worried about you. I don't know how you're working this many hours a week. But like, no one ever came alongside me, at least from what I can remember. Maybe people did and I couldn't hear it. But I think the things that weren't helpful, right, were people making passive aggressive comments about how much I was working. Or, whatever, versus like actually asking, are you okay? Like, what do you need? Like, I don't know. I don't know what you're going through, but how can I support you? Right? So if you're a supervisor out there, if you have a group practice or you're working at an agency or you have your own private practice, you're just a supervisor of other people in any capacity, and you see people that are working multiple jobs and that are showing up in a perfect manner all the time, that don't make mistakes, that are always that like overachiever, please check on those people, because chances are they are not okay. And they don't know how to tell you. They don't know how to tell you that they're not okay, because then, right, then what does that mean, right? If I tell you that I'm not okay, what does that look like?
Yeah.
Right? Am I going to then not be fit to do my job, right? Like, I'm going to get fired, or I'm going to be told to take a break. Okay, well, great. Well, when your job is helping people like this and you need a break, then what does it look like, right? It's not like I can just automatically have a job where I'm not showing, so that I did, like, I looked at other things in the profession where I didn't have as much clinical output, where I was doing other types of things in the field. And that was helpful in some ways. And also that also aided to my burnout, because I wasn't really doing what I loved the most. I just was taking a break from some of the heaviness, or so I thought, right? I took a job actually working it was more of a medical setting. And I thought, great, I'll use Solution Focus. It was a beautiful place to work. I was really excited. And then the pandemic hit. And then I was in a medical, place where it got more clinically intense than it ever had been, right? So I was surrounded by traumatic grief and all of these things in the middle of a pandemic, and trying to see private practice clients because I was committed to them. Like, how do you tell your client in the middle of the pandemic, hey, I can't see you? Because I'm also a human going through the pandemic. Recognizing when we're not okay and what do we need in order to like get back to that, right? Like, going through the motions, all the things that we do, like we all get to that point. And it's not just, I think we look at a lot of things from an ethical perspective, and certainly I love ethics. I'm all about it. I'm very conservative when it comes to ethics. I definitely want to put client safety number one. I also think that in our field, we put client safety over clinician safety. And I think if we switched that, we wouldn't have to worry about client safety as much. If I am putting my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, financial health first, I am automatically going to show up for my clients in a more ethical manner. I am going to have healthy boundaries. I am going to clinically be able to be present for their sessions. I'm going to prepare and kind of think through what we're doing in the session, have a plan, follow up, all the things that I know how to do. But that's not how, right? We see it through this lens of like ethics, maintain your license, don't do anything bad. Okay. Client abandonment is like the thing that we're trying to avoid, but it can't be. The solution can't be clinician abandonment. Like, that can't be the solution, and so then what does that look like, right? How do we figure out a solution? And for me, I had to just stop working for other people for a while. I had to look at building something. And I asked a few people along the way. I got advice. I saw what other people were doing. And then I was told all kinds of things. I mean, people told me, I can't believe you call yourself a social worker and you're not taking insurance, or you're choosing to have a cash pay rate. I can't believe that you call yourself a social worker and you're not doing work pro bono. I can't believe you call yourself a social worker and you're not working for an agency, like all kinds of things. And the reality is, I don't think that any of my clients that I have at my practice consider me to be less of a social worker. I'm
Mhm.
really proud of the work that I'm doing. And I'm really impressed with the clients that show up. My clients that show up at my practice are just as courageous and brave and tough as all of the clients that I've worked with any other place. And I get to find ways to adjust the scale as needed, according to the Board of Behavioral Health or whatever that looks like. And none of that is anyone else's business. I get to
Right.
I get to be a therapist, and I get to pay my bills, and I get to take time to really look at self-care from a different way. And all the projections that I get from other people, or that I have gotten from other people, are very much, I think, just a reflection of our field as a whole, right? Because, like, what does it mean for me if I'm only seeing clients 4 days a week and I'm getting to have flexibility with my schedule, but you're still working, at an agency and you're still seeing 45 clients a week? Yeah, I'm, that's what you're doing, but it doesn't have to be like, so, like, certainly someone that has that experience might be looking at me and have all kinds of feelings about it that we get to project. And that's the cycle, right? That I did that when I was, felt like I was in the trenches. I would look at other people and be like, well, I don't know how they're doing that. Or I could never have a
Yeah,
cash pay practice. I could never not take insurance because I'm in it for the people. And it's like, wow, all of the systems that are broken are not my job to fix. I am not
exactly.
going to fix our behavioral health system. I am not going to fix community mental health. I am not going to fix insurance reimbursement rates. I am not going to fix any of those things by myself. And it's not my job to have to martyr, myself in order to, like, do that. But I didn't know that I had a choice, right?
Right.
Because what would it mean?
Well, and you hit such
Yeah.
an important point there that you and I can both relate to being in the position of those who have placed judgment on the decisions that you and I make as business owners presently, right? That we've actually been in those shoes before, where it either didn't feel attainable or it didn't feel allowed, right? But you
Right.
and I both know sitting here presently, we have found an abundance of permission, whether giving it to ourselves or it being given to us by others. God bless their souls that they've done that for us, right? But recognizing that anyone who is in a position to judge or place shame towards someone else, they're willing to do it towards themselves. That's how it works,
Yeah.
right? And so I'm
Yeah.
very curious to hear more about how you take all that we're discussing and apply it and what it means for you to be someone's teacher or someone's mentor. Because I'm sure that you've put a lot of thought and reflection into this at this point for yourself.
Yeah, I love being a supervisor. I love watching people, kind of come into this field and go through the kind of the journey. It's been something that's really important to me. And I was I was a teacher in another profession, and I really value being able to bring those skills to the table. For me, when I think about being a clinical supervisor, I think about pairing it with phenomenal clinical supervision the best that I can, which means for me that I continue to get clinical supervision. I have people on call, right, that I can message to say, hey, I need to staff a case with you. I need some clinical supervision as a clinical supervisor. What's another course I can take? Hey, here's a question that someone supervisee has that I don't know how to answer. Continuing to educate myself so that I can show up in the best way possible, right? Or have a supervisee right now that is getting trained in something that I'm not trained in. So that's making sure that they have phenomenal clinical supervision with someone else as well, right? Because I don't have to be trained in every single type of everything in order to be a great supervisor. It's
Mm-hmm.
making sure that my supervisees have the resources they need to be their best selves, right? Who is it that you want to be in the field? You have permission to be exactly who you are, to bring all of your gifts to the table, right? To lean into the things that you're passionate about, to see the clients that you want to see, to work with the populations that really, like, light you up, right? You don't have to be me. Please don't be me, right? Like, that's not what we need. And so for me, I love getting to work with supervisees and figuring out the things that they're really excited about. Um, and then helping them have the resources to get there, knowing that that starts with making sure that I am doing what I can and what I need to do. And then alongside that, it's longevity coaching and it's business coaching, if that's what it looks like, right? So how do you market your brand? What is your brand? What do you have to offer? If you were going to go to a networking event and talk about the things that you bring to the table, right? What are the things that you bring to the table as a clinician? All of us have things that we bring to the table. Newly licensed, 10 years in the field, it doesn't matter, right? So who are you now? Who do you bring to the table and how do you speak to that, right? How do you really lean into all of the gifts that you have and how do you recognize the things that you want to build on, right? How do you set your schedule? What jobs are you taking? If you work for me, if you work for someone else, it doesn't matter. But what does your schedule look like, right? What does self-care look like? That is different for every person and it's different for every person in every season, right? Compartmentalizing is a part of it, depending on how your brain works, right? So if I have something really heavy going on in my life, that actually might look like me going to my office and seeing a full caseload of clients the next day because I need to have a little bit of a distraction, right? For another clinician, that might look like not seeing clients the next day and taking the day to go meditate or do whatever that is, right? So it's knowing yourself, continuing to do your own work, whatever that looks like, and then being able to structure kind of your life around it, right? What is the life that you want to have and how can you help build a career that supports and sustains that? And, how do you work towards success in this field, right? So maybe someone does supervision with me for a while and maybe they go back and work in community mental health or they work for a school or they work in a hospital. Fantastic. Go do that, right? And hopefully I've given you some tools to be able to take into those organizations where you can set boundaries in a different way, where you can advocate for yourself, right? This is the max amount of clients that I will see. I'm not going to see 9 clients in a day, not only because it's not good for me, but it's not good for my clients, right? So figuring out the job that you want to take. If you want to work in community mental health, like knock yourself out. I think that, everyone works the jobs that they work. We're all created for different things. But being able to have tools where you can take into those jobs. Okay, so if this is your work schedule and you are going to be working 4/10s at the prison, awesome. So how do you structure the rest of your days in order to make sure that's sustainable for you, right? What are things you can do during your lunch break? What are things that you can do throughout the day that you need in order to make that 10-hour day sustainable so that you can have this job that you're super pumped about with this population that you really want to work with so that you can work with them for the long term, right? So not everything about all of the jobs in our field are, are terrible, right? I think if people are able to come in with a game plan on how to make something work for them, how can they advocate? What questions do you ask during a job interview? What things can you get in writing before you accept a job that allow you then to have a job that really works? And this is not about entitlement. I think I was talking to someone else the other day and they were talking about kind of this entitlement of people coming out of grad school with this like automatic belief that they're just going to like get to make $100,000 a year and like only, work a few days a week. And I'm sure there is a certain amount of that. I think there's a very big difference in a generation of people that are kind of setting the expectation for what they're worth, what they're willing to, do and not do. And, I think that that's actually a really beautiful thing, right? If you can go to a job interview and say, yeah, absolutely. Like I'm going to work hard for you. Okay, 4/10s, great, fantastic. Do I have a 30-minute or an hour lunch break? Can I get in writing that I am not going to be interrupted during that time? Or is there a place that I can go during my lunch break where I can get some privacy? Or whatever it is, right? What music do you listen to on your way to work to hype you up? What do you listen to or not listen to, right, on your way home? If you work with primary sexual abuse or sexual assault clients, then you come home and watch Law and Order SVU. That actually might not be sustainable, right? Maybe you need to not watch any TV. Maybe you need to watch a comedy. Maybe you need to, I don't know what that looks like, but it's also about the intake. Like, what are we intaking on our downtime?
Yep.
taking a break from the work also, because I think there's also this big push that everyone needs to be doing the work all the time. And like, dude, like healing is not your purpose. Like living and continue to sustain, like find other things, do the work along the way, but also take a break. Maybe you don't read that latest, book that just came out in the field. Maybe you read like a romance novel or like a really great sci-fi or whatever you're into, instead of. And when people ask you if you've read that latest book or you're going to this latest seminar, you say no. And that's it, because you don't have to explain to anybody why you're doing or not doing something,
Mm-hmm.
But it's almost like healing has also become a little bit of a competition, or, I don't know what it is, like being enlightened. And I'm glad that it has become more socially acceptable for people to do all the things. And if your social media feed is all about growth mindset and all the, like turn it off, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, go walk outside, do something different, because we need spaces to just be a human being. And that is going to look like having a day where you don't want to continue in this field. That is going to look like having a client that makes you angry. That is going to look like being resentful at someone that you work with or work for. That is going to be being really sad. That is going to be being really disturbed by something that someone tells you. That's going to be struggling with what you experienced in your personal life, and now you're going to be going to see clients, and how do you hold space for that? We're all going to struggle with all of our own stuff. None of that goes away. But I think we have the opportunity to do a better job of helping people manage that and balance that, and figuring out, try this on, right? Okay, so this thing happened and you're struggling with this. Well, maybe try this on to see if that helps, right? Oh, no, that didn't actually help. Or great, okay, like what I've learned is I need this when I'm feeling this way, or these are the types of clients that I might need to adjust the schedule of this week, right? Or how can I move things around, right? If you have a client that has a very flexible schedule and you need a break, is it possible to reach out to that client and say, hey, instead of coming today, would you be able to come on Thursday, right? If they're able to come and it doesn't matter to their schedule, fantastic. If you need that hour and it works out, what's the harm in that, right? So it's not, I have a supervisee, and we talked about this idea of like, when do you cancel, especially when you're in private practice and you don't get paid whenever you don't work, right? And so like, where do you draw the boundary, right? Of, I'm sick. If I'm not going to get it, if I'm not contagious, do I still show up? I have a migraine. Do I still see clients? Someone died in my family. Do I still show up and see clients? Like, how do you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have to get to the point where we all know really, what are we working in a way that harms ourselves or not? Is this going to help me? Right? Am I able to show up for my clients? Obviously, the first question I ask myself, right? But I also know, because I've been programmed to be able to show up for people even when it causes me harm, that's not always the scale that I can measure it by. Can I
Yeah.
show up for my clients? Usually the answer is going to be yes, because I can compartmentalize, I can perform. That's a part of my own trauma story. That is a part of adaptive skills that I have learned. They have served me well in so many ways. And that's not the yardstick that I can use, because
Mm-hmm.
just because I can show up doesn't mean that it's good for me.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you going in that direction earlier of that word entitlement, uh, because I believe we are. We are entitled to financial security, and we're entitled to define that for ourselves regardless. No one else knows. And what is financially secure for me may be very different for you, and vice versa. And so it's neither of our business about the other, really. But even what you were speaking to with like scheduling and what your body needs during the day, or preparing for a job interview and what questions to ask, like there is a certain level of entitlement that I would want us all to have, that we are entitled to being able to honor our health first and foremost.
Right.
Whatever that health component may look like, spiritual, physical, mental, whatever it might be, right? And knowing that if we're therapists that are entitled to our needs being met first and foremost, then we're going to be able to show up ethically. We're going to be able to show up predictably and reliably within our career, because to be a therapist, again, is just a career. It's all it is, right? And a career is an avenue to have financial security. And we chose a profession that is a lot more than just making money in the sense of what we're doing and the impact we can have. But without that entitlement, we're inevitably going to show up in a quite codependent manner.
Yep.
Right? And
Yeah.
so I really appreciate you bringing that word into this space, because I hadn't thought of it from that perspective. But like, yeah, I am entitled. And I'm okay with that. It gets a negative connotation in how it was being used within, the story that you shared. But I think there's an opportunity for us to view that from a really positive stance, that I know myself well enough to know what
Yeah.
I'm entitled to, despite those adaptive strategies that I learned earlier in my life, despite essentially those younger parts of me trying to make sense of something presently that is too much anyways, right? That I can have that self-leadership within me to know. So it's a beautiful, beautiful place you went.
Thank you. Yeah, I think encouraging people to know that they are entitled to being valued, and being cared for and being respected, and that you don't have to kind of like fall in line to this cultural expectation that you just have to see all these clients and do all these things, right? You're going to automatically have a caseload that's going to be completely overwhelming and you're never going to be able to get through it. Yeah, we need people to do all the jobs. And also people continuing to set boundaries and say, hey, maybe it is so difficult for your organization to hire people or to sustain people because of these things, right? And maybe organizations will start looking at that and maybe shift. Maybe they won't. I don't know. I've been in leadership positions in organizations, and I will say that it's more difficult, to switch around than you might want. But the reality is, like, until we are all able to stand up and say, actually, I am not going to see 9 clients today, like hour-long therapy clients. Like, I'm not going to do that. Right. And I know that I can't do that. Right. Then how do organizations know? Right. Because if you have those few people like me that will see all the clients and will do all the work, right? Then it also sets a really unfair expectation for everyone else that works there, because automatically it's like, well, she's doing it.
Yep.
Then all the other people can do it, right? So I certainly was part of the problem, and it absolutely was my codependency. And I've done a lot of work in my own recovery to be able to heal certain things. And I wish that I had someone that would have come alongside and said, you are valuable in what you bring to the table, right? And I want to help you sustain that value for the rest of your career, however long you want that to be. I am grateful that I was able to see a way out that allowed me to continue being in this field, because I love being a social worker and a therapist. I love advocacy. I love working with my clients. I love supervising and teaching. And I came very close to just bowing out, had a great career in retail before I went to grad school. So I was like, oh, you know what? Like, I can easily go back to working in retail and managing a team and doing that, and not having to listen to all of the things that I'm hearing from people in our field, and not having to worry about, right, the big bad board and the licenses, and like not making a mistake that was going to like end my whole career, and like all of the horror stories that we worry about, and much less someone in an organization, right? Like learning, okay, so I work at this organization. If their paperwork isn't set up in a certain way, the board doesn't go after facilities. They go after, it's the individual therapist, right? So even associate level therapist or a fully licensed therapist, have you looked at every single documentation that's in the treatment plan? Even though it's someone else's complete job to do all of that stuff, if the things don't say the certain things, and And got really overwhelming, because it's like, geez, I'm already doing too many things, and at the same time I could still get in trouble and my license could be in jeopardy. That doesn't make any sense to me, so, but that's also not information that I knew, right? So what courses are we teaching our clinicians on? How do you work for an organization and protect your license? How do you work towards protecting your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health? What are the things that you need in order to make that happen? And absolutely, if you want to work towards financial wealth, knock yourself out, go, like, do it, what other people do is really none of our business, right? So my company, me doing this for me, I am so proud of what I've built, and the clients that I work with just bring me so much joy. It's just incredible, these people that I get to work with. I'm so grateful for all of them, and I'm excited to continue building a company that aligns with my value system, where I get to teach people and have supervisees and do all the things, right? So that I can accomplish whatever goals I want to accomplish in the future. And all of that I get to do without other people's permission. Like, I don't need anyone to come alongside and say, hey, Annie, it's totally okay. You can do this. You can build a thing so that you can have this nonprofit that you want to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
I get to figure out how to work towards the goals that I want to work, that are important to me. And I get to do it in a way that is ethical and wonderful. And I'm grateful for people that have helped me set up my company to where I'm able to make sure that I'm following kind of all of the boundaries, and people that have negative things to say about it, honestly, like, what they have to say is none of my business.
Yeah.
And I hope that they find something that allows them to have joy in this field. I hope that they are able to work to a place where they don't have resentment and anger towards people who are working towards a different type of career in this field. The belief that therapists, but particularly social workers, because it was really interesting to me, like, people with different licenses, I didn't really find, I mean, I'm sure that it was there, certainly, but colleagues that I knew that went to other graduate school programs or that had other licensures didn't tend to hear as much about, like, price point or, kind of like financial things. A psychologist or, my LPC friends or my LMFT friends, right? Certainly people hear negative things in every field. I think that particularly social workers, there's this expectation that we are going, that we have to.
Whoa, interesting.
Things because we have this code of ethics as social workers, right? And I love my code of ethics. I love being a social worker, and I have had case management. I have done all the things, and there are lots of jobs out there. But I had this last year, someone tell me that I was not doing anything. I wasn't doing anything social worky, so to speak, because I have this cash practice, right? And this belief that in order to have a social work job, I need to be working, for DCS or doing case management or whatever it is. And so any social workers that are listening, whatever your license is, please know that you have value and worth as a clinician and all the things. And particularly social workers, please do not sign up for this idea that because you're a social worker, you have to sign up for a vow of poverty, or you have to martyr yourself, or you're not a clinician. Because I also heard people say, I don't know how you can charge that as a social worker, right? Where I have a friend that has a different license who actually has higher price point than I do. And people don't question that because of her license. Oh, but you're a social worker, I didn't know you did anything clinical. All of these things, right, that we hear, that people have these ideas, right? Like, tuning out the noise and knowing that you don't have to listen to that. You can be a phenomenal, kick-ass clinician with high quality clinical services, helping people, and not having to work 60-hour work weeks. It's possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that someone else's meaning making doesn't have to be yours. And
Right.
that any rules or expectations that we're actually bound to follow, we can find within our state law and codes of ethics. And outside of that, we are free to decide it for ourselves, which when you look at it from that perspective is so expansive in the
Right.
sense of we're allowed to do it however we want to do it, so
Yep.
long as we're within the laws and ethics, right? But outside of that, it's ours. This has been a wonderful conversation, Andy, and I'm curious to hear from you with all that we've been discussing, right? And this relationship that you're building with yourself. I have had very similar experiences, and I know that it can have a ripple effect in ways that we weren't expecting. And I'm curious for you to share as we wrap up our time together, what might be some of the ripple effects that you've experienced that on the front end, when you were in that hole that you had found yourself in, you weren't necessarily anticipating you'd have on the other end?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think some of the ripple effects are still rippling. I guess, part of that is how much I've learned about myself, and how much I've learned about setting boundaries in all areas of my life, but also knowing that people will come alongside you. You will find your people that you will align with. I think I was not expecting the grief associated with moving in a different direction. I wasn't expecting to have to feel like I was letting go of a certain community of colleagues,
Mm.
and how much vulnerability it takes to put yourself out there in a different way, the courage it takes to do something new, um, and then being able to lean into that in all aspects of my life, and know that the permission that I give myself clinically, or from a business, I guess, perspective, also gets to show up in all areas of my life. But yeah, being able to sit here on a Monday, right, and have this incredible conversation, knowing that I get to set my time boundaries, and there are going to be people that are not going to like the changes that you make, and giving yourself permission to know when to let go, who or what to let go of, um, and then the ripple effect of finding peace and freedom in the midst of that, knowing that things are going to be tough. Things have been really tough. It's been a really hard year, and I have more peace, in my life than I did a year ago. I have more freedom with my schedule, with my ability to manage my time, with my decision of what I want to build, who I want to work with, the things that I do. And ultimately, I've grown. I don't think I was expecting to grow this much or learn. It's tough, right? We just get these layers. We get to do these things and lean in, and then, oh, cool, there's this other part, right? So I think for me, taking the time to not work, right, when I wasn't working 6 days a week, then I got to see a lot more of the stuff that was brewing under the surface. So it gave me the opportunity to dive in deeper to my healing, the things that
Yeah.
maybe I was avoiding, the things that I had been using as a way to kind of like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. So maybe I'll just work more unconsciously, whatever that is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think the healing aspect is continuing to ripple. I'm continuing to really gravitate towards people in my life that support my healing in all ways, and physically, right? I'm definitely feeling the ripple effects because I'm able to start. I was able to go for a hike the other day, and I didn't get sick. And so knowing that physically my body is starting to come back, and that feels really awesome.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. You're such a beautiful soul. This has been so wonderful. Thank you for giving your time and your passion. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It's been wonderful.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time.